Reddit Ask Me Anything. I am a correctional officer, 7 years, ask me anything. Verified. If you were given a blank check to reform the prison system, what changes would you make and why? Officers, more pay. And more programs and better education for inmates to explore their interests so that when they get out they have all the tools ready to not come back. And better working facilities. We have 4 maintenance civilians that fix something broken all day every day. We do, but the civilians are there to teach them and supervise them. What's the weirdest thing you have found up an inmate's butt? A Galaxy Note 8. Took him 3 hours to get it out. Horizontally or vertically? Lol, thanks for answering by the way. Lol, IDK, my sergeant retrieved it. I'm reading this on a Note 8. Makes me feel very uncomfortable. Used? People think it's a sure thing that child abusers will get taken out once they get to prison. Is that true? Also, how would the other inmates find out what that person is in for? They will most likely get beaten up but rarely killed. And when they make phone calls they ask someone on the outside to look it up since it's all public info, especially since they're a predator. Aren't the calls monitored to keep this from happening? Yeah, but they aren't intercepted at that point in time. Someone reviews that later at night and that's how they find out about anything dumb they might be trying to do. I'm a therapist who works with sex offenders. In your experience, how are they typically treated by the other inmates? How do the sex offenders behave in prison? Not op, but I am a corrections deputy. They are not treated well. If other inmates find out about their charges, we usually have to move them to protective custody. In my experience, SO. Inmates behave relatively well for the most part. Usually quiet and playing table games with other SO. Inmates. Hit the nail on the head. Not a CO, but former inmate. Camp 1 was fairly low-key, nobody was trying to run their time up. So they stuck a lot of the sex offenders on these camps. They did tend to mind themselves though, or they could find themselves in trouble quick. While nobody was trying to jump out of a window, nobody is willing to take shit from a Chester. Can you clear up that last sentence for me? I can't really make heads or tails of it. Jump out of a window equals doing something monumentally stupid. Chester equals molester. Do upstanding, peaceful inmates receive a special treatment? Kinda in a way, yeah. Like me, for instance, if an inmate is really respectful and genuine about it, if he asks me to charge his tablet during the day, they are only supposed to be charged at night, I might do it if I get a chance. I do it to show the other inmates that I can work with them if they are respectful. Inmates get tablets now? Is there an internet connection too? Yeah and no, it's based off a kiosk system they hook it up to if they want anything new on it. What do they do with the tablets? Do they load games and ebooks onto them or something? Exactly what you said, in music. So theoretically if I go to prison I can still play Minecraft? And get free food? Why the duck am I living in society again? I've heard there are a few downsides to being in prison, too. How much incoming mail gets read? I send my nephew letters about Pokemon and grocery shopping and books I'm reading. Do they skip over the boring letters from the aunts? Everything. Multiple times. Is prison rape as common as most people think? Not really. A lot of them lie about because we treat it with such seriousness and gets another inmate into trouble and into confinement immediately. Wouldn't a prisoner have to be insane to lie about being raped considering the stigma it carries? They all know it's a game, so really no stigma. I'm curious about how you keep prison life from bleeding into regular life? Lots of COs in my family, and one family member in particular got to the point where she treated her kids like inmates. Also, I'm sorry this has already been asked, but have you worked more often with male or female populations? I treat others as they want to be treated, and my wife is very understanding. She will let me come home and take a nice long shower to decompress and have dinner ready for me. It's a team effort, really. Males. My older brother has recently been sentenced to prison for about 10 years. Any advice I should give him about making the best of his situation? Keep your head down, and do not go into debt. For any reason whatsoever. That's how they get the newbies. I've never been to prison. How do you go into debt? Is it monetary debt or debt to other people, favors? Debt to other people. They'll act nice and say, "Hey man, do you want my dessert?" Or something like that. Next day, they'll tell you you owe them your entire dinner tray for the dessert. Basically they just prey on the new guys that don't know nothing is free when you're locked up, and nobody actually wants to do you a favor for no reason. The other folks here have given you good advice but not very thorough. I'd like to expand on it. Keep clean. This means showering and keeping your area neat. It's a sign of respect and helps your cell not get tossed around during inspections so much. Work out daily. What else do you have to do? Besides, it's in his own self-interest. Do not join a gang, ever, period. I don't ducking care the reason. They only lead to more trouble than they're worth. If he's in a gang already, drop out. Hell, more than half the yards, in California, at least, are dropouts already. If his prison allows it, and if he's interested, a guitar is a great way to pass time. Don't duck around with drugs. Weed is sometimes okay, provided he won't risk added time, but usually the weed in there is overpriced and weak. Same with Pruno. Use phone calls sparingly. I know that sometimes you just need to hear a loving voice, or sometimes family just needs to hear you. But in the long run it's an expensive and exploitative market. You'll pay way too much for those calls. If he's doing that much time, he might look into getting a degree by mail. Faith and religion isn't my thing, but if he's into it I would stress being careful. There are regular services in prison that are fine, but stay away from the psychotic inmates who think they're preachers but secretly on a shit ton of meth. Get a hustle. Crafts, reselling coffee, whatever kind of hustle he can. This kills time and buys more canteen snacks. Visits are the ducking reason for living. If he can get a job, I strongly suggest kitchens. The work isn't too hard and the extra food is worth it. Sorry I saw this earlier but I couldn't find it till now. But just to take advantage of everything the prison offers that can help him. And just to overall improve himself. Fat, work out and get healthy. No high school diploma? Get his GED. In the podcast, Ear Hustle, which is dope, they talk about racial segregation as just default. The exception, if I remember correctly, being the inmates who play the game D&D. Are there programs or efforts to encourage racial integration, or is it just a matter of course? Really just a matter of course. Now when I say that there are plenty of inmates that don't care about racial segregation. But whenever it comes to a fight or brawl they will side with their race 99% of the time. Where do the Asians go? Do they have their own group or do they end up with another race? Lol, legit, I have seen like 10 Asians the 7 years I've been there. How is the food they give the inmates? Do you get the leftovers? It's not that bad for the most part. And no, I bring my own stuff. Worst physical altercation you've seen between an officer, maybe yourself, and an inmate. An inmate beat the dog shit out of an officer out of nowhere cause he was high on K2. And no, the officer is not an eye-hole. What's the most heartbreaking experience you've had? Having a good friend of mine kill himself because his wife that worked at the same prison was having sexual relations with a couple of inmates. Are there ample opportunities for staff to engage with inmates in this way? Seems like that'd be difficult in such a crowded and controlled environment. You would be surprised. Jesus. Ouch. How was the wife treated? What was her reaction? She went to jail for a little while and didn't seem to care. Jesus. Have you ever met someone you genuinely believed to be innocent, wrongfully convicted? Yeah. An inmate is in prison for life because some boss raped his 5-year-old daughter and he killed them. He is a very stand-up person. He should get pardoned. That's legit scary because I know for sure that would be me too. I think most fathers would say the same. Any insight on what it's like to work as a cook at a facility? My brother is considering taking jobs as a supervising cook at both federal and state level facilities. I actually work in food service and work with a civilian back there, and it's not bad just to be headstrong and not be dirty. What is something that you think the general public does not know or understand about your job, or prison in general? It's not as bad or dramatic as people make it. As long as you're fair and consistent and don't let them walk over you, then you will be fine. Inmates respect the staff that have time in. How did you land this job at such a young age? Just apply. In Florida they can hire 18-yo. When I started it was 19. Has any celebrity been an inmate where you work? That wide neck dude that everybody made neck memes about came through for a couple weeks and transferred. That wide neck dude, LMAU. And we all know exactly who you're talking about. What's something you wish would change about the prison system? The way the administration treats us. They act like since they are way above rank that their poop don't stink, and it feels like I'm not on the same team as them. Does your facility sell the whole shebang chips? If so, have you tried them? Yeah, they do, and no, I haven't, but the inmates sat they are really good. Okay, who's the dirty CO supplying drugs to inmates for cash on the side, and how hard is it to report such things? IDK, and not hard if able to find out. How often do you have your life threatened by inmates? How is it as a career? Pay, benefits, environment, rewards, etc.? Depends on the jurisdiction, but overall, likely not bad. Where I live, NY, state COs start out at like $55K a year, with various ways to bump it up: location pay, hazard pay, and a shitload of overtime available. My state also does this thing where when you retire after 25 years, they take the beat 3 of your last 5 years, average them out, and that's your annual pension for the rest of your life. And since most COs are in their early 20s when they get hired, they end up with a 70 to 90K pension for life by 50 years old. State insurance and shit is also pretty good here. Environment. Well, it's a prison. Pretty on point. What education is usually required? High school where I'm at. What level prison do you work at? Do you see more fights at the higher level? Have you been in a fight with an inmate? It's a psych camp, and fights happen about at least once a week. And Yap pushed me up against the wall and I eventually got him down, but he socked real good on the side of my head. What type of leadership development opportunities are there in this field after the academy? They are everywhere, TBH. You just have to be willing to move to a bunch of different prison if you want to rank up quick. Or put in the work and bide your time if you don't want to leave your facility. I read that depression is common among correctional officers. How do you think your job affects your mental health, and do you have any recommendations for maintaining a good mental health? Yeah, I suffered from that and a short temper when I started working there. But the prison will give you 5 free sessions with a therapist with the employee assistance program. Also having a good hobby to decompress with. And seeing how you can use this place as a footstool to something better. What are some of the worst things you've seen in prison? I remember coming onto shift one night and I look over to the 8, and on the top tier the inmate had a razor stuck in the foreskin of his penis and finally got it out and cut his sack open and handed his testicles when I finally came up there to relieve the other officer. What a nut job. What the duck? Do officers get into it with the inmates? Oh yeah. Shouting matches for the most part. Is it a battle to get the inmates to follow the rules? Some of them. About a good 10%. What do you think of the US's way of treating prisoners as well as the standards of the corrections facility you are working at? Do you think that prisoners come back to prison so fast due to not enough help, tools in prisons, or due to the stigma outside that no one wants to employ UECT when they are outside? I think it's both, TBH. I volunteered with the chaplain as a mentor to the inmates. During my orientation led by a correctional officer, I was quite taken aback at how pessimistic her view of the inmates were. She had come in as a cheerful, optimistic mentor 2 decades prior, but since has the view that the inmates are always scheming, always out to get something from the kind-hearted people who want to help, and she discouraged us from any relationships with them, even after they've completely served their time. She recommends crossing the street if seeing them walk towards us. I'm not sure where I stand between punitive and rehabilitative justice, nor am I one of those people that constantly sees the good in everyone, but her attitude seemed way too down. Is your experience the same as hers? Ultimately, I want to help these guys however I can, but that's hard if I follow what she says about purposely keeping my distance. I do understand that to some degree, barriers and hierarchy are necessary, so that isn't lost to me. You have to heed her warning, but at the same time just legit help them. A lot want help but don't get it. What if an inmate required a service dog? What is it like for them? Do they get to have their dog with them, or are they sent to a special prison? They are assigned inmates as helpers. I've been a correctional officer for 9 years. You doing this? Ask me anything while at work? Boring job. Lol, no and yes, and it is very boring. What surprised you the most about the penal system? How chill the majority of inmates are. And how manipulating they can be. Hope I'm not too late to the party and that this hasn't already been asked. But what's the one stereotype about the correctional system that really frustrates you? Rare ask me anything that is not actually a self-promotion or advertising, love it. Do you ever go deep in thought about what would it be like if you had a different job? All the time, and I'm actually going to school right now for software developer. Are the jits worse than the adults? No, most of the time they are really intimidated by the whole prison aspect unless they have been in and out already at a young age. What is defense against drones dropping contraband into the yard? Not op, but I have been a correctional officer in Texas for almost 8 years, and yes, we do have NSOP to follow if a drone is sighted in or near the perimeter. No bullshit, shoot on sight. I actually work the outside guard towers pretty much every day that I work, so I know this one well. Our post orders clearly states that if a drone is spotted near people, we should tell them to move away, then use our shotgun to shoot it down. Once it is disabled, maintain security over the area where it went down, which means keep your gun pointed at that area, and radio for a supervisor. I've spent about 5 years on and off as an inmate. Have you ever had anyone put peanut butter in their cheeks before a strip search just to duck with you? Lol, no, but sometimes I'll joke with the staff and inmates stuff that would be hilarious in those situations. Whoa, you made it to the end? You're a ducking beast. I'll cut you a deal. Smash like and subscribe for more curated content, bruh. It's free and that's a great price.